Okay, good afternoon to my students at the seminary. We will be continuing our discussions on Chinese philosophy. Um, the last meeting, we've said that Chinese philosophy or Chinese Buddhism, I'm sorry, no, is a completely different Buddhism of its own. It has undergone so many changes now since it was imported from India. Okay, but to continue, we'd like to talk about the Pure Land right now. The Pure Land is actually our topic for today. Okay. When you look at history now, the way that Buddhism has entered China through the Silk Road now has happened even just a few centuries now after the death of the Buddha. Buddhist missionaries have been traveling the Silk Road. And in fact, now we can say that the kingdoms that occupy the Silk Road were Buddhist, no? Were first Buddhist, no? Even before China became Buddhist. Okay? That's why places like Nepal, Afghanistan, all of these places, no, have a lot of Buddhist relics, Buddhist statues. Okay, so Buddhism entered China through the Silk Road. Okay, eventually you had also Chinese monks, no, going to India. Two by the Silk Road, no? The most famous who was Swangshu, Suwan Su, okay? Or better known as Tripitaka, no? When he journeyed to the West. This is contained in the book, no? Journey to the West, wherein the monk, no, traveled all the way to India, collected certain documents, and went back to China. He was not the first to do this. I think he was only the second. But earlier, by 200 or 300 centuries now, another monk went to India, got some of the writings, no, the sutras, no, from India, and brought it back to China. Okay. By this time, no, northern India was basically turning into Mahayana Buddhism. Okay, so there were two factions, Theravada and Mahayana. And the sutras that reached China were Mahayana sutras. And that is why Mahayana became the predominant kind of Buddhism in China. After Shuangxu, no, there was another Buddhist scholar from China who went to India by the sea. No? He traveled by boat. And so slowly certain writings, no, certain sutras as they call it, no, were brought to China. And of course, no, these were in Sanskrit or Pali. And so they had to be translated. They had to be translated into Chinese. So many of the work, no, in Buddhism during these days, no, were in the realm of translation. So scholars, no, were translating the Sanskrit and Pali text into Chinese. Okay. And we've said in the last podcast that because of the translations, no, a lot of the words, no, actually lost their original meaning. And of course, no, they also had to use Chinese words and Chinese concepts to convey many of the ideas here, like emptiness, no? It's an important idea in Buddhism. Became different, became Wu Hui, no, in China, which is more of a Taoist term. And the interpretation of emptiness as something that has no independent existence of its own took on a slightly different meaning when it was translated into Wu Wei. Wu Wei means that there is no mind, that there is no rationality behind it. Everything is spontaneous. Okay. So there were slight differences. Okay. Also, in trying to describe the bodhisattvas, no, the example we use is that Avalokiteshvara, who is a male bodhisattva in India, became Guanyin, no, in China. So all of these translations and mistranslations, no, accident or otherwise, no, found their way into China and became the first kind of Chinese Buddhism. Now, what I'd like to talk about here is that Buddhism became highly scholastic in China. Why? Because to translate Sanskrit into Chinese, you needed scholars, no, who were familiar with both languages. And of course, no, the translation that was being done then, and the publishing that was being done was by hand. So not only is it that only the scholars could do the translation, and many of them translated the sutras according also to their own interpretation and even to their own to advantage them. Okay. So a lot were lost in the translations. But it became a very, very scholastic endeavor. Only the highly educated can do the translation. Moreover, only the highly educated could actually read the translations. So the the kind of Buddhism that we had in early on in China, no, was highly elitist. It was a Buddhism for scholars, no, and the nobility, who alone, no, could not only understand the text, no, by reading and writing, but also they could afford the books because everything was done by hand, no. So you can imagine that manuscripts were few and rare, and because of this, no, they were very expensive. It was only much later on when block printing came about, no, in China. By that time, they were able to translate the Pali Canon or the Tripitaka, no, into what we call the Chinese canon. But this was much, much later on. Okay. So Buddhism was a very intellectual endeavor. And that's why the nobility and the royalty, no, the royal houses preferred Buddhism. But how could the monks, no, give Buddhism to the masses? Well, all they were given, no, were just to attend, no, to have these mga deities, no, that they could actually start praying to. Okay, Buddhism, while it is highly philosophical and not at all, well, it can be independent of devotion. Being highly intellectual, Buddhism is basically a very, very sophisticated philosophy of its own, which only the very, very rich could understand and live, no, in China. Okay, so the monks had to give to the masses a form of Buddhism that is watered down. So this is called expedient means. It doesn't mean that they are less important or less impactful. It simply means that they were actually created to help people, no, who are experiencing certain conditions. So how do you teach Buddhism to the masses? How can you tell them about impermanence? How can you tell them about dependent originations, about causes and conditions, about emptiness, which are very, very difficult concepts, no, to comprehend? They can do this, no, by creating religion. So Buddhism was experienced in two ways, no, in ancient China. One as in the form of sutras, no. You had to read the sutras, recite the sutras, and understand them, and only the scholars can do that. And the other one is that they had to create a devotional religion. That's why they had to create the bodhisattvas. That's why they had to create certain rites and rituals, no, which were anchored on devotion. And that is why majority of the Chinese people, even now, no, understand Buddhism as Pure Land Buddhism. Pure Land Buddhism, which is a kind of Buddhism which simply says, no, that if you recite the name of this Bodhisattva or to this Buddha, and ask for intervention, this Buddha will take you to the Pure Land, no? At the time of death, or even before, no, you can be granted access to the Pure Land. Okay, and that is known as Pure Land Buddhism. So these Pure Lands, though, there are many, not just one. Okay, so for example, you have the Western Pure Land, no, which is the Pure Land, no, that was created by Amitabha. I think that Pure Land is called Sukhavati. There's another Pure Land, no, it's called Tusita, and that is the Pure Land where Maitreya Buddha resides. Okay, the Buddha to come. So every bodhisattva, every deity, not all the bodhisattvas have Pure Lands, no, but a lot of them do. No, the Medicine Buddha, you have all of these deities, no, having their own Pure Land, and the idea here is that by asking for intercession, by asking the Buddha to help you at the time of death, they will bring you into a place, no, where it's easier to understand Buddhism. It doesn't actually bring you to enlightenment, but brings you closer to enlightenment. So going to the Pure Land is a form of enlightenment itself, because supposedly in Sukhavati, or the Western Paradise, there's no suffering there. There's no need for food, no need for money. So you can just live your life now focused on the Buddha's teachings. So what happens in Sukhavati, aside from living in a very, very nice place, no? The people who go there, or the minds that go there, study Buddhism. Okay. And then when they learn Buddhism, they continue on, or they become bodhisattvas and they go back to help other souls. No? So that is basically a Pure Land. Now, very, very early in this series of podcasts, I've said that the Pure Land is a state of mind. Because at that time, no, I wasn't really sure about the Pure Land. I wasn't sure if there's such a thing as a Western paradise, wherein you have trees, no, that bear fruits of crystal, that you have crystal clear waters and gems, no, making up the sand, no, and buildings made of precious gems and jewels. Okay, for me, I think that was just a way of trying to entice the masses, no, the Chinese masses, into wanting to go to the Pure Land. So I wasn't really sure, but what I'm sure about then was that the Pure Land's a state of mind wherein it becomes easier to understand Buddhism with the help of a bodhisattva, or with the Buddha Amitabha. Okay. But then as of late, I'm beginning to think that there might be a Pure Land. Well, because my teacher said so. My teacher told me that you cannot just think of the Pure Land as a state of mind. No? It's a place that actually exists. And I tend to believe my teacher. No? So I've been thinking along that line as of late. No? Now, in this morning's podcast, no, we talked about the monads. We've said, no, that reality as it appears to us only appears to us, no, uh, in our mind, and that these are windowless, and that no other minds, no, can actually see the world as we do. Okay, so in a way, no, to describe reality as that, no, my my consciousness, no, is mine alone, meaning to say I'm the only one who can see the things that I'm conscious of. That can be akin to, or actually equal to, Leibniz monad. So monads exist. Okay, so that my alaya mind, or my mind, no, is just one of many that is out there, no, and that all of these minds are interconnected somehow, because we're all interconnected, no, we're all interdependent, no, with karma, with our karma, with the karma of others, with causes and conditions, and we're all interconnected with what they call Indra's webs. So in Indra's web, no, there is this connections, no, and that would be the web, no, that actually interconnect these minds, okay? And the minds no can be likened to Leibniz monads. Okay. Now, try to imagine this. A very, very evolved being like Amitabha Buddha. Amitabha Buddha, no, having learned so much, having sacrificed for hundreds of thousands of years with the sincere hope of alleviating millions, billions of people, no, from suffering, no, by bringing them to his pure land. Hmm. Such a being would also have his own monad. Amitabha Buddha would have his own way of seeing his universe. And because he is so much more enlightened, this universe would be so much greater, don't you think? The way he sees reality is so much clearer, so much deeper than we can actually imagine it to be. And Amitabha Buddha wants to help us. So he said no, that just by saying my name at least 10 times before you die, or by meditating on Amitabha Buddha, at the time of death, no, we can enter his pure land. So what is being said here is that Amitabha has a monad, a world of his own called uh, the Western Pure Land. And by being devoted to Amitabha Buddha, we are welcome to join him in that Pure Land, no, after death. So after we have collapsed this small monad, no, which is how the world appears to us, no, through our own consciousness. As soon as we depart from that, no, we can actually go straight to the the more delightful monad, no, of Amitabha Buddha. So that's another way of interpreting the Pure Land. The Pure Land, no, is a place where Amitabha resides. And because it is his Pure Land, it is reality as it appears to him in all of his wisdom and all of his compassion and all of his virtues. No? That world would be so much different from this world. It would be a world that is free from suffering. So basically, that is what I now imagine the Pure Land to be. Okay. The Pure Land no, is a state of mind, but it's also another place, no? Another place we're in Amitabha or the deities now reside. Okay. And that is my take on the Pure Land right now. So as you can see, no, going back to the lecture, well, you can see that this kind of Buddhism is so attractive, even to the not just to the non-intellectuals, no, or to the masses, no. It can be attractive to anybody because it's actually an easier path. The easy path actually is what they call it. Pure Land Buddhism has been called the easy path because all you have to do is to recite the Buddha's name. All you have to do is to be devoted to the Buddha with the hopes of entering his Pure Land. So the the method is more simple. You don't really have to spend a lot of time meditating, reading and memorizing the sutras, trying to understand very, very difficult concepts now. Leave that to the scholars, leave that to the royalty. Okay? Because all I have to do is to say Omitofo or Namo Amitabha Buddha, Namo Amitabha Re, Namo Amida Butsu. All I have to do is to chant his name now. And upon death, no, I will enter the Pure Land. So isn't that a much better or an easier way, no, to enlightenment? And so this kind of Buddhism has become very, very popular. Not even in ancient China, but in modern China and in the rest of the world. No? I read somewhere that 90% of all Buddhists are Pure Land Buddhists all over the world. And I can understand this. No? Not just because it is easier, but it's also effective. I've learned that by doing the Nyanfo, by chanting the Buddha's name. No? It actually is a kind of meditation in itself. And by thinking about Amitabha Buddha and chanting his name, it's easier for me to follow the precepts. It becomes easier for me to become a good person. Because how can I aspire for the Pure Land if I try to live in a very violent, cruel, selfish way? Okay. The Nyanfo is not just getting us to focus on Amitabha Buddha or to any Buddha, but it's also a way of purifying our mind. It purifies the mind. And as it is said in the Lotus Sutra, my my master told me, that when someone is so focused on Amitabha Buddha, the self recedes and the only person that's left is Amitabha. Now, Amitabha will take over your life, making your life, more suited towards enlightenment. Okay, so I've also experienced this for myself. I know that by doing the Nyanfo or by chanting the name of the Buddha, it's actually a purifying act, a kind of meditation and a practice, a Buddhist practice all of its own. So I hope that this will help us in understanding Chinese Buddhism. No? The Pure Land came about because of the need for the monks to teach Buddhism to the masses. And that was actually very fortunate because as a result, no, everybody benefited. Not just the masses, but even the intellectuals. No? Even the intellectuals, even those who are very wealthy and highly learned, no, have benefited from this Pure Land Buddhism. So that's all. Mamito po. Bye-bye.